Oxford and also teaches at the Oxford Faculty of Theology. He's a visiting professor. I won't mention all the university names, but I'll mention quickly since he's giving me these eyes here. His books here, Qatar, Malaysia, Morocco, you name it. He's there, mashallah, based in Doha as well. Professor Ramadan is a member of the UK Foreign Office Advisory Group on freedom of religion or belief. He was also elected by Time magazine in 2004 as one of the 100 most influential people in the world. And there's no doubt he is one of the most influential leaders of our times and one of the most intellectual, greatest thinkers of our times. I would like to invite Dr. Tariq Ramadan to come up here to address us for about 20 minutes, and then I'll introduce our great moderator for a Q&A session that is going to follow after that. Thank you very much, Dr. Ramadan.
Can I speak from here? That's fine. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Thank you once again for welcoming me here, and thank you for organizing this short discussion as we have 1 hour. I really want to thank the Canadian organization for what is it exactly? Did you put it in the right way like this?
Justice and peace.
Justice and peace, yes, exactly, which is exactly the right way to put it. And then for Justice and Peace in the Middle East, for organizing this. They have been very patient with me, mainly, because as you heard, it's quite complex to organize things with me personally. So they organized not only one lecture here in Toronto, but we also are going to be in Ottawa tomorrow, in Montreal the day after tomorrow, and meeting lots of people. And it's not the first time they are inviting me, and they are inviting so many scholars. So I hope that every one of you is going to be with us this evening, because today it's what I'm going to do. It's completely different from the discussion later on, as we are talking about the spiritual resilience for Muslims. So it's more spiritual and more political. But at the same time, you will see that I don't make any difference between the two of them. So, and I really don't like all this business that we have now with new trends in the West telling us, be spiritual, forget about politics, as if you forget about politics, you are not involved in politics. You are. There is nothing like forgetting about politics. You have to be quite clear on some principles. So what I wanted to talk about, as I thought I had more time, but in fact it's good to have 20 minutes and then for you to have time. When it comes to our situation and your situation as Canadian Muslims, and you went through quite interesting time in this society here with the change, and alhamdulillah, what is happening, it's the way towards the better. While it's not ideal, you still have to be very aware that there are challenges ahead. As citizens, not as Muslims, as citizens, there are things. It's not enough to have a better domestic policy. It's very important to have a better overall and domestic and foreign policy at the same time that could be better. But for us, when we speak about Canadian Muslim and the way we can think about this nurturing spiritual resilience, I just wanted to say a few things here. As an introduction, I have been involved in, because what was said about, it's very, have to be very cautious when in Islamic setting we say about somebody that he's a philosopher. That for even when, and you see, he mentioned also the Time magazine, and Time magazine was saying one of the great innovators, and the Salafit, aywa, mubtadi'. We told you, be careful with this guy. So, and philosopher for some, it's kalam. yeah. In Arabic kalam, he speaks, but that's not serious. It's not Islamic studies. And that's true. I really assert the fact that I studied philosophy. But I studied also Islamic studies in a very traditional way, and I want both. I really think now that we have to reconcile ourselves with a sense of what in fact Shatibi did in fiqh, which is a philosophy of law that we need, a philosophy of knowledge, a philosophy of life that we need, which is not only to come with fiqh, which is the legal framework, but an understanding, a deep understanding of what we are talking about. And this is where I put, in fact, the spiritual dimension by saying what is important for us, whatever is the discussion, in Canada or anywhere on earth, that the fundamentals for us should be clear. The world is complex, but let us start with clear fundamentals when it comes to what we mean by, when you say La ilaha illallah, when you say the very essence of Islam, which is a tawheed, and then you say Muhammadun Rasulullah, you say an axis which is a vertical one and a way which is where we are heading. And this has to be clear. The fundamentals should be clear. So this is the first F that I wanted to just remember, 3 F. The first one is the fundamentals. Now the fundamentals are giving us a way, which is the way is to follow the Prophet ﷺ and to know the fundamentals. And all this is based not only in an intellectual way of putting things, because what we find in the Quran is قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِ يُحْبِبُكُمُ اللَّهُ. Meaning that the very essence of the Tawheed is not to know it with your mind, is to feel it with your heart. It has to do with love. And then if out of love that we follow the Prophet ﷺ, and following the Prophet ﷺ, what is your goal? At the end, what is your goal? Because at the end, if you live in this country, the very essence of the spiritual question with Allah and with your own consciousness is, what am I doing here? What is my purpose? What is my goal? Who am I going to serve? Am I serving him out of love with justice? Or am I serving any other power out of utilitarian expectation, money, power? That's the deep question. This is the only true spiritual question that you have. Are you free with him, or are you imprisoned with anything which could be a shirk, which is shirk al-akbar, or shirk al-khafi? So are you in a process of liberating yourself to come back to Allah and to come back to yourself? Because at the end, to come back to him is to come back to yourself. So the first is to have the fundamentals. The second is the legal framework, al-fiqh. And when I started thinking about us as Western Muslims, I was thinking we need to reform our fiqh, our Islamic law and jurisprudence. And by the way, fiqh is not jurisprudence only. It's law and jurisprudence. And the fundamentals are what we call a sharia, not the way it's translated by some Orientalists or some Muslims or some media or some intellectuals. Sharia is the path towards faithfulness. It's the path towards this driving water. It's the source, which is important. It's a path. So we are serious about the fundamentals. We know about the limits, the legal, but then what we also have to ask ourselves is the frame. And what I think is sometimes missing for many of us is to get a clear picture of what are our fundamentals, what are the limits, and what is the destination. What do we want to achieve? And we have to start with this. This is the way you define your spiritual, religious, and philosophical identity, which is not the only one. Anyone in Canada who wants to define you as Muslim first and exclusively Muslim, you have to refuse this. You are, and the point is, first, you have to be very cautious with not accepting this reduction of your identity by saying, who are you first? I'm many things. I'm many things. And then the way I am with Allah is giving me a way also to be with my citizenship, my commitment to principles here. So this is also something which it's part of our self-definition. But I would say that the first challenge that you have in Canada is this very deep understanding of the way you define yourself, and you know the fundamentals, and you know the way. Now, what I said in the what I believe is also something which are the so these are this is the starting point of the story. And then the second thing is what I mention as prerequisites is, if you want to be committed as Muslims to your faith and as Canadian Muslims to your country, you have the 3 L's that are necessary. First, it's to abide by the law of the country, and no one now, you discuss with all the governments around the world or in the West, they're telling you we don't have a problem with the great majority of the Muslims, they abide by the law. And you know that the law of the country. The second is to know the language. So that's very important. And now, second, third, and even for you in an immigrant country, by the way, you can see how things are working, because what you had with the last election, this instrumentalization of a niqab business just to get, is something that we knew for a long time in Europe. That's exactly the way. So we were not expecting something like this in an immigrant country like Canada, I say, open to all this diversity, and you can see it could happen. And it's happening in the States, and it happened to you. Now you can understand that anything could be instrumentalized in political terms by people who have an agenda. He knew that he was going to lose the election and say, oh, that's it, I need to find something. And it worked for a while. And then, of course, it means that the power within the civil society was stronger than this instrumentalization. But it could be one victory, and be careful, you have to be aware that it's an ongoing process. It's going to come back by targeting, and you can see now what is happening in the country as Canadian Muslims, just to get this sense of reconciliation and resilience in spiritual terms. There are 3 reforms that are needed if we understand the fundamentals, if we understand the way, and if we understand what do we have, all the legal framework is for what. The first, whoever you are, it's already half of it. Okay, so that's fine, yes. Let me try to stick to the time. So, when you listen to the Quran saying, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, O you who believe, it's a call. And what is clear is that every time you read the Quran, from what happened during the Meccan period and what happened into the Medinian period, is Allah is calling you. He's calling you to do what first? First, to acknowledge that He's the one, and straight after you acknowledge this, and this is where you can get it from the supplication coming from the Prophet ﷺ, is that in fact the first thing that happened to him when he was called, it's a conversion from the heart, changing your heart. The first thing that you have to do at the very moment you respond to the call is to start to reform yourself. To reform yourself. يا أيها الذين آمنوا استجيبوا لله وللرسول إذا دعاكم لما يحييكم وَعَلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَحُولُ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَقَلْبِهِ. You have to respond to the call of Allah and to the call of the Prophet ﷺ, and know that Allah, the knowledge of God, Allah works between you and your heart. Meaning, you want to come to God, come back to yourself. And to come back to yourself, this is what we have today when we speak about the spiritual dimension of Islam. Spiritual dimension, in Arabic, spirituality, it's a very complex term because we don't have it in one term. We don't have الروحانية. It's not a word that we find in the Quran in such a way. الروح, yes, يسألونك عن الروح. الروح is what is in you. Allah is putting your ruh into you. So this is why النفس is الروح في الجسد, is the spirit in your body. What you have to do is to keep it alive. لما يحييكم, to keep this alive. And how are you going to do this? It's through the purification process. So Islah al-Nafs is what we call the purification process. What is purification process? It's what you have in Arabic, Tazkiyat al-Nafs. Tazkiyat al-Nafs is what? In fact, if you have to get it deep in the understanding. So you have 3 words. الروح, الروحانية, التزكية, والربانية. كونوا ربانيين بما كنتم تعلمون الكتاب ومما كنتم تدرسون. So كونوا ربانيين, that we have the definitions of these words from the scholars, Ibn Taymiyyah, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, Ibn Hazm, these are scholars, or Miskawayh, for example, when they are talking about this, they are talking about something which is, how are you going to be connected to God with all your heart and all your being? And this is what we have to do as Muslims, wherever you are. So ask yourself, the purpose of your life is a process of reforming yourself. Now, what are the means? What are the means? Of course, we know the means, very simple at the beginning. It's to rely on this love of God that is going to go through reading the Quran, following in the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ, and abiding by the pillars of Islam. Is it enough? No, this is the starting point. That's the starting point of everything. But in fact, the very essence of this reform, the first one, the reform of the self, it's in fact a liberation process. Liberate yourself from the self. The first is your own ego. So whoever you are in Canada, if at the end this world is taking you for political reasons to be completely losing your way, that's the opposite of the spiritual path. The spiritual path is, what are you doing to liberate yourself, to get to the true freedom? And to the true freedom, if when you say La ilaha illallah, to check, who are you serving on earth? Where are, and you know, for example, in this dimension, the spiritual dimension, it's all about liberation process. In fact, Islam is a struggle for freedom, for liberation. And this is the spirituality, is reconcile yourself with the spark that is in your heart, which is calling you to Allah, which is what? فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا وَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِدِينِ حَنِيفًا. So come back to this. So at one point, every one of us, in her or his life, has to ask yourself, the purpose is this liberation process. So we have all the means, but you need to keep the light. And to keep the light is contrary to what is said. This is why I'm telling you. It's very political what I'm telling you here. So when the Prophet ﷺ is coming back to Allah, Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qulubana ala dinik. What does it mean? It says confirm, it's just to strengthen our path. Which is what? Help me to remove from my life anything which has to do with shirk. What is shirk? Only the idols? No, it's money, it's power. So at the end, if, for example, get it as it is, if in front of a tyrant, a front of money, a front of power, you are not ready to speak, there is something wrong in the way you are liberating yourself, because it's all about getting this courage. Afdalul iman, afdalul jihad, kalimatu haqqin amam sultan ja'ir. So you liberate yourself from all the power. So there is no disconnect between the spiritual liberation and the political liberation, because there is no political liberation if from our side, in our frame, with our fiqh, with our fundamentals, we don't get it. So this is the added value of our presence as Muslims, but it's also a personal struggle that every one of us should go through, asking in which way we are dealing, and what it means here, it's the connection of these three dimensions, which is important. Islah al-nafs, which comes here, and this is why you get it. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, a very simple verse that you have in the Quran saying, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, those who believe and do good deeds, knowing that the good deeds that they are doing are helping them to believe in a better way. So the connection between action and faith makes us visible. Canadian Muslims should be visible out of their good actions that are all nurtured by their freedom, if they are free. And as soon as you are colonized by serving power, pleasing your fellow citizens, getting money, keeping quiet about oppression, I'm sorry, don't call this spirituality. Call this compromise. Call this giving up. Call this being scared. The one, you know, being scared is also one dimension of shirk. Because at the end, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, there is no power and strength. It's him, he is giving you this. And when I don't have time now because I was told it's only 10 minutes, but this is the starting point of the discussion. Now, the second reform, and very quickly, the second reform that we have also to go through, which is helping us to go to something which is the conclusion of everything that I want to say today. The second one is about you reform yourself and you reform the world. Canadian Muslims, with all the Canadians, with faith or without faith, with religions or not, should make Canada a better place. الَّذِينَ إِن مَكَّنَّاهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ. This is what you have. You came here, or you were born here, or you were raised here, and you are in this country. إِن مَكَّنَّاهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ أَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَوُا الزَّكَاةَ. This is what you are doing. You build the mosque. That's fine. If you think that with this mosque that's enough, that's wrong. That's the beginning. أَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَوُا الزَّكَاةَ. You have to pay. By the way, you have to pay zakah. By the way, you have to pay zakah. You have to pay zakah. It means that poor people, not zakah that you sent in Pakistan or in Egypt. No, the first people who have the right to use zakah, تُؤْخَذْ مِنْ أَغْنِيَائِهِمْ وَتُؤْدَى إِلَى فُقَرَائِهِمْ, that the people who are poor here. You have to care about the poor people in your country. Meaning what? Is zakah, by definition, as Muslims, means care about your neighbor. Care about the people around you. You have origin. Your country of origin, you send sadaqat. Here you pay zakah. And then here, أَتَوُا الزَّكَاةَ وَأَمَرُوا بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَنَهَوْا عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. They commend what is right and they resist what is wrong. Here in Canada. And commending what is right has to do with what? The common dignity of every single human being. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ means if there is one Canadian here in your jail, one Canadian as a poor guy, one Canadian as a woman or a man who is discriminated, أَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَوُا الزَّكَاةَ وَأَمَرُوا بِالْمَعْرُوفِ means that you have to be involved in it. So the only way you are connecting the spiritual liberation is by being free in the way you speak. This is where we need to have brothers and sisters. Being involved here. And then resisting what is bad means that you have to be constructively involved in this society, in Canada. Not only for the sake of Muslims. خَيْرُكُمْ أَنْفَعُكُمْ لِلنَّاسِ. The best among you is the more useful for humanity. Not only for Muslims. So the question here is, the spiritual reconciliation you are talking about is that there is no disconnect. So where are you in the picture, knowing that wherever you settle, the singularity, the distinctiveness is how you promote what is right and how you resist. But you know, وَنَهَوْ means resisting. So I'm scared of seeing too many Western Muslims. They want to promote the good and they disappear when it happens, when we have to resist the bad. Injustices, discriminations, and the fact that, you know what? Your Prime Minister today is much better. Barakallahu fiqh, it's the right moment. Thank you. You know, your Prime Minister now. He's very good on domestic issues, very good. Let us see. I don't know, Allahu A'lam. He's much better than the one before, which is not difficult. But let us see what is going to be the foreign policies. The foreign policies. And by saying this is what is happening in the Middle East. We are going to talk about this evening. But this is very serious, starting with the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Is who do we support? Towards whom are we silent? What you have to do is not only to be critical in a negative way, but to be constructively critical, to be present in the society by making it clear that there is no dignity as to your citizenship if there is no dignity as the way you support the oppressed people around the world. Palestinians or Africans or refugees or migrants, whoever, you are by definition, through your spiritual liberation, always on the side of the oppressed. And if in Canada they want to make you forget about our brother in the jail in Egypt, by the way, it's not very complicated. Egypt is not complicated. You have an oppressor, a dictator, who is putting his opponent in jail after a coup d'etat. That's the reality of it. And this guy is a despot, he's a corrupt, and we have to say it clearly, with no fear. Because what I hear now, and it comes also as our, I'm not coming to the RS and it's over for me. Because I am not going to accept by any scholar, and by the way, I question a scholar with his knowledge, using the knowledge to come and to tell us, I'm praying for the success of a dictator because it's adab al-ikhtilaf. No, you don't clap. You never clap. With me, it's a fatwa, you get that. That's my personal fatwa around the world. But be courageous with this, in a constructive way. Because when I heard, I'm sorry, some of my scholars that I respect so much, one saying to the army in Egypt, "Idrab bil malyan." That's unacceptable. And having one of our shuyukh that I respected and still respect as to his knowledge, but not as his political stand, being invited by the United Nations, saying to Biden and the United States of America, you know what? We go for peace and we forget about justice. We speak about the extremists and we forget about the despots, and then we try to get the solutions and we forget about the reasons. That's not going to work. This is not adab al-ikhtilaf. This is not adab al-ikhtilaf. This is not an Islamic opinion. This is a political stance that is forgetting the principles. Why am I saying this? Because at the end you will get what you deserve. If you Muslims, now you are following the scholars only because you like what they say and this is charismatic and you like al-ilm lil-ilm and shaykh wa allama wa sharif all this that we have now, it's not going to work. We need now to check our scholars and to let them understand we are free citizens, we are spiritually committed, we are politically free, and what we want now, it's a consistent Islamic discourse as Canadian Muslims. If you don't do this, you will get them. You will get exactly what you want. Scholars are telling you for 1 hour, fly with me, this is spirituality, and they are disconnecting you from the reality that you have facing. That's not the Canadian Muslims that we need. And especially because you live in this country. There is freedom in this country. There are rights in this country. Of course there are discriminations. Of course there are injustices. But still you are free to speak and you can bring something into the table and be able to speak in a way which is help the people. Help the people. You have a mission in these countries which is in the free democratic societies to make it clear that you have something to bring to the table. The thing is going to be in the Middle East is we need voices, and it's going to come from who is going to do the job. If you are so good in settling down, getting the money and being quiet, that is going to change anything. We need to be an added value. And the last thing that I wanted to ask you here, reforming the self, reforming the world for the better, these are the two reforms. And there is one which is important. One which is important, which has to do with how do we reconcile ourselves with our presence with Allah and our presence with our brothers and sisters in humanity. Reforming your own intention, meaning renewing your intention. You know, everything that we have to do, Al-Bukhari was saying, the most important hadith among all the hadiths is the hadith that you know in 350 abwab min abwab al-fiqh is إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. You can have, just before you pray, you renew your intention, isn't it? Every time you wake up in Canada, renew your intention. Why are you here? What are you doing with your life? Are you useful for something which has to do with your own liberation, reforming yourself and changing the world? Tajdid al-niyyah, it's so important. Because between you and your own niyyah, there is your salary, your job, your family, and everything could distort you from this liberation process. This is the real spirituality, in fact. The deep spirituality, the deep tazkiyat al-nafs has to do with, are you renewing your intention? And sometimes I can tell you, my own cousin in Egypt, just few hours before being killed by this same tyrant there, just in the lifts before going, he was saying to the one who was with him, let us renew our intention. And when I was in Turkey and this story was told to me, I always say, subhanallah, in 3 minutes, half an hour before being killed, he sent us the only thing which is important in our life. Renew your intention. Why are you here and what do you want to achieve? And if you get this right, you understand that you need knowledge of the self, knowledge of the world. In Canada, you need to know the challenges here in your country. This is your country, so you need to go. Don't expect any scholar coming from I don't know where telling you what are the challenges. He can or she can tell you about the principles, you know the challenges. Here, this is your country. So you go and you renew your intention. And this is the only way you free yourself. This is the only way you come. You know, in this country, and this is my conclusion, to anybody who is saying peace, I say, I'm sorry, Islam is not a religion of peace. It's not. Islam is a religion calling for peace. And it means that there are struggles when you are confronting the tyrants and the despots and money and things. You have to stand up. You have to stand up. So it's calling for peace. But peace with the conditions. And this is why it's right to have justice before peace. And anyone, like the current despots and Netanyahu, who wants to speak about peace without speaking about justice, they are misleading all of us. Even with your own spiritual peace, salamat al-nafs means that you have to be just with yourself. And the first to say this is Adam alayhi salam wa Hawa. Allahumma dhalamna anfusana. We have been unjust with our own self, so no peace. Peace means be just with your own self. Be just with your own self. Do what you have to do with your mind. Do what you have to do with your heart. Do what you have to do with your body. Do what you have to do with your time. Do what you have to do with your own self. It's a comprehensive thing. And then do exactly the same within your society. Wherever you live, the people around you should be in your presence the added value of dignity, of respect, of serving the people. This is who you have to be. And to do this every single morning. It's very simple. Every single morning, question yourself. Renew your niyyah. Why are you here? What are you trying to achieve? And if at one point it's not clear, you have to go through the process of questioning everything. If it's not clear, if you are here for your job, for your salary, for your family, and you're forgetting the very deep question of why my life? How am I building my life? I was doing this in my plane to come here. At one point I said, now I'm traveling all this. Why? Well, I'm here. At the end, it's very risky. It could be for fame, it could be for having people listening, and knowing, you know what, at the end, all of you here, this might mean nothing. You know that for me, you can be useless. I'm sorry to tell you. In spiritual terms, you could be useless. I might be lost, followed by millions. And I can be saved, changing one. And this is, you know what, if you understand this, you understand why capitalists and neoliberal system, they understand that if you understand deeply your faith, you are the most dangerous people for the capitalist system relying on quantity, because you don't care about quantity, you care about the quality. The quality and only the quality. Wallahu a'lam wa ala wa ahkam. Assalamu alaikum. No.
I guess takbir could work. Takbir. Thank you very much, Dr. Ramadan, for inspiring us for the last good 30 minutes, alhamdulillah. We have about 30 or so minutes for some more enlightening conversation. Don't worry, Dr. Ramadan is not going anywhere. We're going to ask him some very good enlightening questions, hopefully, inshallah. I would like to just simply introduce our wonderful moderator, Sister Tendisai Cromwell. She is an active part of Dawanet's Project Civic Engagement team. She's a filmmaker, writer, and journalist. Her foray into journalism began on the streets of Palestine as a reporter for Ramallah-based publication in 2009. Since then, Tendisai has written for various publications and produced radio segments at CBC The Current, while also completing Master of Journalism program at Ryerson University. Now she is into production and creative writing and hosting. We'd like to introduce Sister and welcome Sister Tendisai here, and she is going to be asking Dr. Ramadan a few questions, so please be patient with us. Assalamu alaikum.
Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Ramadan. It's such a pleasure to engage in this conversation about cultivating spiritual resilience. Many of the questions I have that you've already answered in your discussion, but maybe it's an opportunity for you to elaborate on them. My first question is about the public discourse surrounding Muslims and Islam is increasingly politicized. How do we reclaim Islam as a spiritual path while also meaningfully engaging with the politics that surround our faith? You talked about renewing our intentions. Could you elaborate on that?
No, I think it's, yes, on a personal basis, on what we have to do with ourselves within the community. This is what I meant by renewing our intention. Now, I would say that it's politicized, and very often we are called to explain what Islam is not by having all the discussion about violence, extremism, and dogmatism and literalism that we have now. What is important, once again, it's for all of us to be able also not only to explain to our fellow citizens what Islam is, but for ourselves. And I think that there is here something which I would argue, and this is why I agree with the brothers and the sisters saying we need much more education and spiritual education by coming back to what I said is tazkiyat an-nafs and all this. But in order to make it less politicized, it doesn't mean to disconnect it from politics. It's to put politics at the right place. It's not to say it's not political, because this is exactly what you have. I'm going to give you an example which is very, very worrying. We experienced this in the States in 2001, and we are now, it's coming back, it happened also in the UK, now it's in France. I'm just coming from France. I was in Paris yesterday. And then, for the first time, if you heard about Charlie Hebdo, they killed the people who were drawing the caricatures, and also a shop, a Jewish shop. So it was the perception that, oh, these were Muslims against our society and our values. What happened last week is they targeted everybody, Muslims, non-Muslims. So the sense was, oh, it's much more a national emotional reaction. We are all together. So it's less about Muslims, even though, of course, the discourse is about extremists. But it's as if the Muslims are within the national, and things. National emotional reaction. We come together. And then what you have is using this into bringing slowly the French Muslims into, oh, it's right for the presidents to go, we are going to show them, and we are going to kill people, and we are going to send people in Syria. They want us to stop. We are going even stronger. And then it's as if we are attracted out of this desire to be part of the national unity to support unacceptable policies. So this is why we have to be very cautious with our spiritual journey, not to translate it into emotional commitment to anything. No, that's not the right thing. So our spiritual journey should be based on knowledge, should be based on principles, should be based on dignity, and every one of us should do this personally at her or his personal level, but at the same time putting politics at the right place, which means to take the right stance on issues that are important here and there. You know what you have to do, Muslims, in spiritual terms, make it clear in this country that every single human life has the same value here and there. Because what you have in your TV now is dehumanizing part of the people. Look at what happened in last summer with the Palestinians. It's as if 1,200, okay. And when you have now 100 in France, it's as if the whole world is changing. Of course we care and we condemn, but we also have to, so this is also something which, don't make this political, make it a starting point of our spiritual commitment to Islam, to Allah, saying, لَقَدْ قَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, it's all the human beings, not only the white and not only the rich people.
Okay. But yet in the aftermath of Paris, many Muslims are seized by a lot of fear and doubt. How then, in the pursuit of the spiritual path, do we inspire religious confidence within our own community?
So that's exactly the point. The confidence, it's really question, who do you want to please? Are you trying to please and coming close to Allah, which means here to really go through the process of, this is why I'm always saying, know your religion, know the principles, know from what are you liberating yourself. Because at the end, there is a great deal of fear. So from where comes your confidence? Your confidence should come first, of course. For example, I'm exposed to many attacks, for example, in the discussion. Okay, look, I'm following principles and I want to stick to the principles out of love and out of respect and out of my belief. So this is something that is giving you the path. The path. So, and by the way, remember, Sharia means this: you are following a path. It's not the legal, it's not God's law, it's deeper than that. But having said that now, you know that the people are going to spread around suspicion about your presence, suspicion about your principles. So how are you going to deal with this? It's your confidence should be with your principles, but then also based on the way you deal with people. And you are struggling against your own fears. We need a revolution of trust, but also trusting ourselves, trusting our principles, trusting that you have something to bring. And I'm not sure that many Muslims, they say it, but it should not be said, it should be felt, and it should be translated into action by the way we are. So for example, not being only instrumental, you know, this sense of peace that you can have in the mosque. What are you doing outside? How are you communicating with people? So is it out of confidence that you know who you are, that you have something to bring, that you know that you are an added value in the society, that you are bringing something which is social justice, which is reform? And the first dimension that is helping you to go beyond fear is communication. And I'm sorry to tell you, the Muslims don't communicate enough. We don't. You come to the Quran, and we always say this, in interfaith dialogue, we say to the Christians and the Jews and the Buddhists and the Hindus, يا أيها الناس إن خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا. So we tell them this, لتعارفوا, for you to know us. But what about us? What about us getting out of our own intellectual ghettos, which is nurturing fear? If you isolate yourself, you nurture perception that are nurturing fear. You have to interact, you have to come out, you have to deal with the people, and you have to be present. And this, once again, it's not activism. It's intelligent and active spirituality. That's the reality of it. So we have to understand this. We have to stop with this business and reducing spirituality to something which is pray, read the Quran, fast during Ramadan. These are the principles, but this is not the light. from the principles you have the light, and the light is to have spirituality is always, get it as I'm telling you, Rabbaniya, it's exactly this. In everything that you are doing, what is the final goal? Why are you doing what you are doing? This is the spiritual, active and intelligent spirituality everywhere. Why are you doing what you are doing? That's it. And if you have the answer, which is serving, liberating, loving, caring, helping, that's it. So you have the spiritual answer.
Okay. So once, can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? Hello? Okay. So once then we implement what you say, and as a community we gain a kind of spiritual or religious confidence. Religious confidence really isn't taken kindly in a lot of secular societies. So then how do we translate the confidence that we get into a beautiful relationship with our fellow Canadians that don't share the faith with us? How do we have that dynamic spirituality that you speak of that can really be appealing to a wider society?
But it starts by avoiding trying to be appealing. No, I'm sorry, that's not the point. I don't try to appeal. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ. You have to be a witness. And sometimes the witness could be, it's of course, the people when they look at you, I'm always saying to people, be a gift and a question. A gift which is, your presence is adding something. A question the people are asking, why is he or she acting or behaving like this? But appealing, it's not my obsession. You know, sometimes I'm invited in interfaith dialogue, and you can see the inferiority complex and the intellectual complex that Muslims could have. They are very happy when I talk in front of non-Muslims, say, look, they like it. And what's the point? You like it, and so what? We're here to please the people? No. And sometimes, to some people, I'm going to tell you something quite frankly. Sometimes I'm very happy to bother people much more than to be liked by people. Yes, because you are here to come with some questions. What are you doing? Why are you silent? Why are you happy with your money and your life? So we are not here to please the people. We are here to be consistent. And at the very moment you try to be consistent, you always show in a self-critical way that Islam is great, but not all the Muslims are great. That we have lots of contradictions, that we are struggling and trying our best. The way the people would say, okay, they start thinking about it. So this is where I am a call for questions. I'm not fashion.
Okay.
You know, it's not a fashion. It's not trying to seduce the people. We are not here to convert, and we are not here to seduce. We need to recall. To recall. So this is why I'm calling the world now Dar al-Shahada, the space of witness, of testimony. And I'm trying my best for the people to see what Islam is out of my principle of my behavior. And it means that, for example, with our life, to take time to meditate, to take time to reconnect with nature, to take time to reconnect with poor people, to take time to serve, Tell me who you serve, I will know who you are. You serve him and you serve the poor, this is the starting point. You serve the powerful, this is the way it ends. That's the reality. So, and we keep on repeating, عَبَسَ وَتَوَلَّى إِنْ جَاءَهُ الْأَعْمَى. You know these verses, but these verses were very powerful. The Prophet ﷺ thought that by talking to the powerful, he's going to protect the community. No, you respect the dignity of the poor, the old, and this is the way you are going to save your community. So it's changing the parameters, it's changing the whole thing. This is where it starts. This is where it starts. This is the power of your heart and the power of your mind and the power of changing the society. So this is where I would put it.
Okay. Well, I wanted to turn to the conversation of healing as a community, healing individually. What lessons can we draw from our tradition and prophetic examples as well about how we can heal ourselves in these turbulent times so we can achieve the kind of spiritual growth that you speak of?
Yes, that's a good question. And the starting point of healing is to know which type of sickness and disease you can have. So what you said, for example, about fear, it's important. Lack of confidence, it's important. lack of knowledge, it's important. The fact that, I put it like this because when I was studying in, I have the center and you mentioned Qatar, and I'm very often in Muslim majority countries, in the Arab world, in Africa, that I visit a lot. And you can feel something which is really interesting, is that almost all the people around the world, they like the West, but they don't like to like the West. So this is rejection attraction. And you are here, you are Canadian, we are here in this country. So you can keep on saying that, I'm Muslim first, and as if you don't like it at all, Canada, or the opposite, you want so much to show that you are Canadian that you forget about the principles. So I think that we have to take time with our own selves, with our own family, to put the record straight, is that what are the fundamentals. So this is why I started with the fundamentals. And this takes time. This is where you have to renew this intention with your own self. So a dialogue with the self is the starting point of, and by the way, this is basic psychology. Basic psychology. Talk to yourself. Take care of yourself. For many years, one of my main advice ending lectures was, take care of yourself. Look after yourself. So this dialogue, which is important, which is be careful not to be overwhelmed with actions that end up making you an agitated person and not an active person, which is different. And then this dialogue, it's important. Love, it's important. Assess in your life who are the people around you with whom you share this love. Because this is your strength. This is your strength. This is Prophet ﷺ, and he had around him the companions. And the most important thing with the companions was not that they were bright, it was that they loved him. They loved him so much that they were able to go for and killing themselves out of love. So who are the people who are protecting you out of their love in your daily life, which is very important. And it's not only your father, your mother, your kids. No, it's the community of believers. So sometimes we very often speak about my brother, my sister, and it's becoming formal words. My brother. Do you understand what I mean, my brother? My brother. You're my brother in humanity. You're my brother in Islam. My sister. So these are not words like this. It's becoming formal. Even in the way we pray. We just think my prayer is going to be 25 times more valuable if I speak in the mosque. But that's not the number. It's the mosque. It's where you come as a community of faith, where there is something that should happen. I'm always saying this to Muslims. Sometimes you show much more love towards me coming once in this mosque that you show to your brothers and sisters that are here every day. There is something wrong. You care about who speaks, but not who is near to you. So there is a distortion, an optic illusion that we need to. So these are things which are very important in our life. Take time with your heart. Take time with your mind. Take time with your knowledge, take time with the beloved one, and then serve the people. And there is something which is a virtuous circle. The more you, it's just paradoxical, get it? The more you serve, the more you liberate. The more you serve, the more you liberate, which is in capitalistic term, nonsense. But in spiritual sense, in spiritual way, it's the only way forward. Serve and liberate. And the more, in the mystical tradition, in some, Al-Shaziliya and Abdul Qadir al-Jalani, when they were coming, say, I want to follow you, my master. I want you to be my master. Say, okay, you want to be my master? Okay, now for 2 years you go to serve the poor people, and you come back to me. Go to serve, to deal with your nafs, and then I will come with your liberation. But first you deal with your nafs. First you deal with your heart. And I would say that this is something which is important. Everything in Islam, just after La ilaha illallah, started by serving the poor. It's everything about this, serving the poor. And Fatima al-Zahra, the Prophet's daughter, sallallahu alayhi wa radiallahu anha, it's just the way, just always, you have two examples. Either you go to the example of Mecca today, around Al-Kaaba, you have all these new American malls where you are asked to buy just near the purification process, which is just crazy. Mecca is becoming crazy. All these buildings, even you pray, because there is an extension from Al-Haram inside the malls. So you pray and you have shops all around you. So welcome to the liberating capitalism. Straight when you end praying, you go and you can buy. And you come to the other example, the Prophet ﷺ, Medina, around his mosque, poor people. And who was in charge? His daughter, Fatima Zahra, the first to be committed. One example is Medina with the poor, and our contemporary example, which is distorting the very essence of everything, which is around, where we are all equal before God. You just go 5 minutes after praying, we are checked on, are you going to be able to consume and to buy or not? And I think that this is where we are. So I would call you for this reconnection with the very starting point, the very starting teaching of Islam about healing is also about this. It's also about your personal dialogue with yourself and who are the people who are important in your life.
Okay, very good. I wanted to ask you, you touched on this in your lecture. In your book, you write, one must resist the temptation to reduce one's identity to a single dimension, and you call for Muslims to have a broader view of ourselves. You were speaking of identity, but in that spirit, how can Western Muslims expand notions of spirituality that go beyond, personal and community growth into areas of such as like environmental stewardship, or solidarity with other communities such as indigenous folks here? What are your thoughts surrounding that?
This is what I call the fundamentals.
Yeah.
And the fundamentals is the meaning of Tawheed is that, mind you don't belong first to a community. You belong first with a Tawheed to a set of principles. To the point that if your community, if, for example, I was to come here, that's not the case, just an example. And you all agree as a community on something which is wrong. As your brother in Islam, I have to challenge you in the name of the principles. I would disagree with you by saying my community is not a community of corruption or injustice. انصر أخاك ظالما أم مظلوما. We know this, that you have to help your brother or sister when he is right and wrong, and the way to help him or her when he is wrong is to stop him or her from doing wrong. So what is important in our discussion here is to belong to our principles. And the first, of course, is this acknowledgement that there is only one God, La ilaha illallah, that the way we serve the Prophet ﷺ is to follow him, and to follow him is to stick to the principles, and then you have to get it right. Where are you, Canadian Muslims? When it comes not only, because the problem that we have with you Muslims is that you only appear when we speak about Islam. So you are involved in politics and you think, oh, let us ask him, is he going to be better with Muslims? But he's going to be better with Muslims the very moment he's better with principles, not with Muslims. And sometimes we have to be sometimes tough with Muslims to be stricter on principles, because we are not always clear on that. So for example, when it comes to social justice, where are we? Do the Muslim care, for example, about the native Canadian people or the Native Americans? Or do you care about this? Do you care about environment? Do you care about social justice? Do you care about the poor people? Do you care about racism? Do you care about the fact that in jails, in some Canadian jails, you have people who are innocent and who are jailed today? And you call yourself free citizens? You call yourself supporting the Islamic principles? No. At the end, you are transforming the Islamic community into a community of interests. I'm sorry, I don't know this term. A Muslim community is a community of principles. And principles mean be consistent. Be consistent with your own failures and be consistent with your own society. So if you are here, and be the voice for the voiceless. We need people in Canada to deal with people of other faiths and with no faith who are for justice everywhere. It means, for example, to speak about what is happening in Egypt, what is happening in Palestine, but also what is happening in Africa, what is happening in China. I'm very happy to got from the Chinese government the fact that I'm not welcome there. But it's not only because I'm supporting Muslims, but I had very early on been supporting the Tibetan people by saying, I don't accept what you are doing. I was involved with all the discussion when he was perceived as a terrorist supporting Mandela. Before he became an icon, and then the symbol of, and Muslims came afterward. See, while some Muslims, South African Muslims, they were with him based on justice. And he was supporting them based on justice. So I would say here that our commitment should be about, we should be vocal. And you know, there are lots of people here. You are now reaching universities and you are in all the places. You are becoming visible now in the workplaces. We need you to be much more involved in anything which has to do with a spiritual take on environment, a spiritual take on justice, a spiritual take on social justice, a spiritual take on everything. Don't let scholars coming from the moon and selling from there a discourse which is keep quiet about the fact that from here we have to support dictators. Don't let them do this by being completely amazed by the fact that they speak Arabic and they quote the verses of the Quran in such a beautiful way, in such beautiful voices, that they are turning your head, turning your mind into accepting something which is, you are not here for there. They might do this there, but you here, you should not accept this. You should not accept this type of silence. You are Canadian Muslims, free, and use your freedom for what is right, with your principles. Don't do this. When I'm sorry, I come to some conferences now and lectures, I see Canadian Muslims, American Muslims, European Muslims. They are like, subhanallah, the sheikh. What's that? He's saying this. Whatever he says, masha. No, this is, you know, there are studies telling Muslims are following charismatic scholars, and the problem is that they are following charismatic leaders. Charisma is a problem. If one day we reduce all what you're hearing from me to charisma, forget about it. Through all the books and all the lectures, it's the opposite. You follow a message with principles and you wake up with the principles. That's the only spiritual freedom that I know. Charisma is illusion. And the message is the more important. So please, you respect all the scholars you want. Everyone, you can respect, but there are limits. If he, you know, even with you know that you have to do this even your mother and your father. لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق means you are not going to obey a creator in disobedience of the creator. And even if you have your mother and your father telling me وإن جاهداك على أن تشرك بي ما ليس لك به علم فلا تطعهما. Even your father and your mother, if they are asking you to do something which is wrong, you don't obey. So even with the scholars, if the scholar say, okay, I respect you, I take everything which is good from you, but here, I'm sorry, I cannot follow you. I can't. That's not the way. Because seeing people coming from around the world and coming to Canada and teaching you about forgetting the principles and forgetting the political issue is not going to work. Even, you know, I was asked, even here by people saying, okay, you know what, don't speak about Palestine, don't speak about political issues. Of course I'm going to speak. Of course I'm going to speak. So we have to be clear, but you know, the point, because I took too much time with this question. But I just want you to understand here that what I'm talking about here, it's not political. It's really the spiritual way, the spiritual way. And you can't go through the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ if you don't get this. The spiritual way of the Prophet ﷺ was all about this. Freedom, liberation, and consistency. That's what we want.
Okay, thank you. We have time for one more question, and this is about masajid. I want to know your thoughts on, like, for those connected to the masjid, Jummahs and mosque programming present a valuable opportunity to engage Muslims with not only their community, but wider, Canadian society through encouraging much-needed civic engagement. But oftentimes, many people, particularly Muslim youth, feel that the masjid is disconnected from their reality. And so what role do you think the masjid going forward can have in putting forth a more multidimensional spirituality or a more dynamic spirituality that you're describing?
I think it's, once again, you have to take into account here history and time. The way mosques were built at the beginning was in a very protective way. We have to pray, we have to protect the community, and it's normal, it's the first step. And then, step by step, what we saw with many mosques is that they are opening up. Some were only opening up through inter-religious dialogue, for example, or with the neighborhood. What we now want from a mosque is to have a very dynamic presence within the neighborhood, which means in which way we are connected with institutions around, and not only interface dialogue, institutions with the civil society. So this is where, for example, the first step, what we had in Europe as well as in the States and even here in Canada, we had people creating this organization between the street and the mosque, which are dealing with education, dealing with social issues. And this is why they were very instrumental. Have lots of young organization of young Muslims that are working between the street and the mosque. The next step is try to reconnect this, and it depends, to tell you the truth, on the leaders within the mosque. Some are getting it right straight away. They understand exactly the role of the mosque. Some are so scared that they say, okay, you know what, the mosque is only about praying and teaching Arabic and teaching religion. There is this. So I would say it depends on the people, and it depends on the neighborhood, and it depends on the challenges. But this is where we need to have young brothers and sisters being much more involved within the mosque. We need much more sisters being involved, but it's becoming now more and more because they are involved. And then if it's not possible to do it within the mosque, there is nothing preventing young brothers and sisters to set organizations in between, to working, and what we can do in the mosque we do, what we can't we do outside. And sometimes it's good to have many organizations with different objectives that are not in contradiction but complementing each other. So this is also something which is a strategy. We have to specialize and to professionalize. Don't expect from the mosque to get everything there, because this is not the space. But you need to have people who are more professional to do something here, to do something in, for example, don't expect from a mosque to be very much involved in arts, for example. But this is what we need. We need now to have something which has to do with entertainment and culture and everything like this. So it's not going to come from the mosque. So I would say don't expect everything to come from the mosque, and at the end it's not going to be very professional. At the level of what is needed today, we need to have professionals working in the field of social commitment, artistic development, even movies and things like this. So I think that it's better to think about a comprehensive way of doing things with a complementary organizations or a commitment to some of the issues, and the mosque could be also space where we are coming back as a center. But
Like
it
part of the
cannot-
landscape of the
It's
larger,
it's
yeah.
exactly part
Okay.
of the landscape, and but still it could be also the center.
Right.
I would say add how many organizations you want, but
Mhm.
these don't disconnect the organizations from the mosque.
Right.
The mosques remain a place where something important is at stake as a spiritual center as well.
I see. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Ramadan. That's all the time we have here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.